Here we go. All right, man. Coming at you a little early today.
Coming at you early, but right on time. It's April 6th. It's a good Thursday. It is the year 2023. Welcome aboard, everybody. You're listening to the Crushing Iron podcast. We are episode 674.
Yes, we are.
674. I hope you're all having a wonderful, amazing week. Getting ready to celebrate for a lot of you Easter weekend or a 4-day weekend, Good Friday, Good Saturday, Good Sunday. Maybe the kids are off Monday, maybe they're not, but should be a beautiful weekend for everyone. At least if you live in the majority of the U.S. A lot of you just have been getting snow for the last weekend, and we know you're over it. I'd be over it too. It's the season of swings. I told you, I sent you a text yesterday. Like, I got home from a Tuesday's podcast, and it was 82 degrees. Legit 82 degrees here. I woke up the next morning, and it was going for a run. It was 27 with like 20-mile-an-hour winds. I was like, what the hell is going on? I mean, it's great for, like to be, to get prepared for strange weather and acclimation, all that kind of stuff. But it wreaks havoc on your sinuses. But it's already allergy season alone. You can smell it in the air. You can see the yellow accumulating on the hoods of your car with the pollen just drenching all of us, and you're all sneezing and sniffling and whatever. But yeah, it is a great time of year. If it's your first time tuning in, welcome. We appreciate you giving us your time. We know you have quite a lot of options in the triathlon podcast universe and just podcasts in general terms are very valuable, so we appreciate you tuning in today. We cover it all. We do swim, bike, and run specific podcasts. We do race recaps and also a lot of race previews. But for the most part, Mike and I, as coaches, athletes, best friends, we just sit back, relax, have an open, honest discussion about what we're going through in life, not just as human beings, but also as coaches and athletes ourselves. We also talk frequently about what our own athletes are going through. Mike and I work with a wide range of athletes all across the globe, from beginner level triathletes looking at the very first 5K or sprint triathlon, all the way up through elite level amateurs trying to get back to the world championships, and everyone in between from all over the globe. And we'll use the feedback loop we have with them and training peaks, emails, text messages, and the like to drive the discussion of the day. We also utilize our Facebook group. You can search that, Crushing Iron Group. Answer one simple question. We'll let you right in. Awesome people, fantastic community, solid resource in a sport that's oftentimes overcomplicated and way too confusing for what it is. It's a great place to get information, get feedback, answer some of your burning questions like we will do today, and just be a part of a community of that are supportive and limit the sarcasm, limit the sass, give you the meat and the potatoes of what you need to know in this sport. So be a part of that community. Don't be a lurker. Participate. It really is a great community and resource. So we'll go in there once a month, or at least every 3 to 5 weeks, like we will today, and do a little bit of Q&A. Let the people and the members of that community drop in questions. We'll get to as many of them as we can. That's it. We don't do sponsors. We don't do ads, but we do have an agenda, and that's to keep you happy and healthy in your endurance sports journey.
And tough. That's what, yesterday when I texted you, I said, yeah, it toughens you up for the elements, man. This 80 to 20 degree swing. But I got to say, like this morning, I actually woke up early because I was a little nervous of oversleeping the early podcast today at 9. And so I got up early and I was like, maybe I'll go. I'm going to, flip the clock here and get my shit together. So I'm going to go for a little run. And then I was thinking, I'm going to go should I just go outside? Yeah. And then I looked at the weather and I was like, it's 25 degrees. Or I could just go down to the gym, hit the treadmill, and then it hit me. I was like, man, when I'm in a groove, that to me is it's not that cold out. You know what I mean? I don't feel like it's that cold, but it felt cold because I'm not in that mode. So I just somehow got through it and went out, and it was perfect, but I'm fascinated by those little things that, especially now living up here, because I was really psyched about the winter and the idea of, snow and just because I haven't seen it in probably about 20 years living in Nashville and Chattanooga. Yeah. And like real snow, and I was really loving it, but man, now it's starting to wear at me a little bit. And I feel like in some ways this feels almost like the toughest time for me to keep going and working out, because my mind is like ready for it to be warm.
Yep.
And it's always that battle, right? So,
well, there's certain things that like happen in regular non-season affected parts of our lives that kind of signal, hey, isn't it supposed to be getting warmer outside? You got like March Madness or the Masters, or to your certain television shows that people like, oh, it's spring, or summer, and you're like, but the weather is not reflecting. We're reflecting these things, and how crazy it is. But yeah, it's nuts. It's that in the wind, like and that's like, before we hop into our first question, that's a big question people always have is wind. And we've said this a ton, and I'll say it again, is I would rather run the hilliest route possible than run or ride into a headwind all day.
Yeah.
I mean, I've heard, and that's how it was. Like the huge storm came through, and I'm out there running. It's 27 degrees, 20 to 30 mile an hour winds, and you go right into a headwind. And I took Waffles with me for the first 30 minutes. He's gotten up to like, I think 5.5 miles up in his run volume. And, we're running into the wind. His ears are like thrown all the way back. His lips are like moving around. He's looking at me like, why are we doing this right now?
Yeah, right.
He's like, yes, I should be laying on my bed, chewing on a bone, not doing anything. And it legit feels like, especially like when you're in winter clothes, right, to stay warm, it's even worse because your attire acts like a parachute, right? It's not like you're in like a tank top or shirtless and it's like, it's whizzing by your body or your tank top or your tight knit clothing. It's like hitting into a winter jacket or a windbreaker. Okay. You don't want it to break the wind. You want it to release it and go away. And it is, I've heard it described as the thumb of God. Is what it feels like to go right into a headwind. It feels like the thumb of God is pressing down on you and you are going absolutely nowhere. And it does. It has a huge effect on your run pace, comparatively to effort and heart rate and stuff. But yeah, we'll go into that in the first question as we happen. Before we do that, while we don't do sponsors and we don't do ads, we do have ways for you to support us. And that is to go to the website, c26triathlon.com, click on the online store, and peruse the wonderful wardrobe of C26 choices that you have, along with some other accessories like water bottles, swim caps. But yeah, that's the best way to support us. Go in there, find some gear that you like, buy it for yourself, buy it for your buddies. But it's a great way to represent the podcast and the community and also support us and continue to make this ad and sponsor free. We also have some camps coming up the rest of the year with a few openings. You can click on the camp tab. I think we actually have like 1 or 2 spots left for our very popular Nashville Tri Camp. It's our longest running and most successful, most attended Tri Camp. That's in June. I think we have 3 spots left for our new camp in Wisconsin. That is for everyone, regardless of if you're doing Wisconsin 70.3 or Ironman Wisconsin. Is just a triathlon camp on the course. It's geared around those, but it's also a great opportunity to do race recon if you're in race prep, if you're doing those races, but B, if you're ever interested in doing them in the future. It's a great opportunity to just get better at triathlon, be around a great community of people, and learn something new and push yourself. And then we have the March swim camp that we just announced. That's got, I think, just 3 spots left last time I looked. And that is next March, a swim and run focus camp. But check those out. Again, oftentimes a sport that's lonely and isolating, where nobody really around you in your sphere of influence or friends really cares about what you do in the triathlon space or has any idea what it is. You sit around the family table and they say, hey, are you doing any more marathons this year? And you're like, I've told you for the last 6 Christmases I do triathlons. And they're still asking if you're doing a marathon. And when you tell me doing a triathlon, they obviously say, oh, so you're doing the one in Kona. And you're like, no, that's not what I'm doing. And you're like, anyway, forget it. I'm just doing obstacle course racing. Forget about it. So yeah, great opportunity, great people, great coaching. So be a part of that. And unless you have anything else, without further ado, we'll get into the questions of the day.
No, I think that's it. Yeah. Just get to the store. I like that. Buy something for your buddies too.
Yeah, seriously.
That would be a sweet gesture.
It would be a sweet gesture. I'm all about sweet gestures. First question, and it's right into the windy topic, and very timely, right, for Ironman Texas from Jen Powers. Race day bike execution, specifically Ironman Texas. If biking by power, what are your thoughts on normalized power when spinning the legs into the wind and big gear in it with the wind at our backs? What if we get a race day of all side wind? So this is an awesome question, not just for Ironman Texas, but for all courses. And this is a question we had on our weekly Zoom call last week about how to, because to me, windy courses that are flat present the same opportunities to make mistakes as hills with very, very hilly courses. So the athlete that I had in our Zoom call that I coach is doing Ironman Tulsa, right? Very hilly, very challenging course, much like Wisconsin. Everyone thinks that, hillier courses are harder, right? But if there is no wind on a hilly course, then it is the same as doing a flat course with wind when it comes to having to control your power and disregarding speed. One of the biggest challenges people, and we mentioned this maybe a month or two ago, I think, about not having miles per hour on your as a data field on your Garmin or your watch, because when you're dealing with the wind, it plays massive games with your head. Now, it also can be helpful in some aspects to note if you don't ride outside a lot, right? Then you really might not understand what it feels like to have a tailwind. You might think that there is no wind. Sometimes I question myself when I'm out running, in the winter here in the Midwest, it's always windy. And I'll hop out and I almost always go left on my front door. And I'll go left. I'm like, man, it's not really windy today. And then I'll make a right turn and then I'll hop on the trail and make another right turn and boom, my hair's flowing in the wind like Fabio. Like it's like a 20-mile-an-hour wind. I'm like, well, crap. What I thought was easy effort, I'm feeling amazing today, was actually wind aided. And then you turn around and you're going nowhere and like, oh, maybe I'm not feeling the same. So there is a place for understanding and kind of having the knowledge that is there a tailwind? Are you going through headwind? Like I've told the story about, we had athletes doing Texas 70.3, which was like basically not windy at all for Galveston. It was like a negative wind compared to what it's been like there in the past. But I remember the first year that I did it, one of my better races, you were down there. Mm-hmm. It was cool. I hit it out. I had a power goal of I think of 220, 225 for the day to end up like average power close to normalized power. And I remember heading out and I was holding like 220 and I was going like 28 miles an hour. And I know just from my abilities and my CDA and how aero I am on the bike and just the fact that reality isn't going to be my 220 watts is not going to give me 28 miles an hour. So what I knew is I was in a big time tailwind. But what I also knew, because it's a straight shot and out and back, which not a lot of courses are, right? They go right, they go left, they go in boxes, they go in loops. They're very rarely out and back. So what I knew is that in order to not feel totally debilitated on the return trip in this same, tailwind that was going to change to a headwind, I needed to save. Easy course to do that for, because once you make the right turn on the shore, I knew that it was the exact same mileage, right? So very easy to calculate. So I kind of lowered it and I went, I think like 218 on the way out. And then the way back, I did like 230, 232, which ended up giving me 225. Easy enough, right? But when it comes to races like Texas, where you could get headwind, sidewind, tailwind, crosswind, understanding first and foremost what the difference is between average power and normalized power is. And I want to go through that again quickly, because having a power meter when it is windy or when it is hilly is one of the best ways to save your legs for the run and keep you engaged, because power is power, right? Whether you're going on a flat, 220 power is 220 power. Whether you're going down a hill, 220 power is 220 power. Whether you're going up a hill, 220 power is 220 power. Doesn't matter. You're expending the same amount of energy, regardless if it's uphill, downhill, headwind, tailwind. That's the energy, right? Now, when you don't do that and you use things like heart rate or miles per hour or feel, wind, heat, terrain, everything else comes into play and can really mess with your, with your self-governor, or how you've calibrated what feels like what and what should be what. So when you race by power, you have the average power, right? So I call it AP and normalized power for NP. Average power, for example, right? Just before we kind of go into this to explain, hopefully in a way that's easy to understand, let's say Mike goes out and he goes and rides the Ironman, Wisconsin course, and his average power is 200. And for some way, somehow, because he's and he's a legend, he also has a normalized power of 200. So average power is your average, right? And that's what equals your speed. Normalized power, and this is the biggest thing you have to wrap your brain around. Your normalized power is the physiological cost of what the ride took out of you, right? And so I can use that as like a, an investment strategy, right? Your average power is what you're going to get immediately in return. Anything that's over that in normalized power is a negative return, right? So let's say Mike goes out and he's able to smooth out and ride an average power of 200 and then normalized power of 200, right? That gives him a VI, so a variability index of 1.0. Basically impossible on a course like Ironman Wisconsin because it's so choppy, but let's say for argument's sake, he did, okay? And let's say that netted him, for easy math, 20 miles an hour and a 5-hour ride. He crushed it. 5 hours, he's PR and he's crushing everybody. Well, let's say Mike goes out the next year and he's like, I'm a champion, I'm a legend, I hit 200, I did a 5-hour bike split, my VI was perfect, I don't need to pay attention to my power, I can do whatever I want to, I can crush the uphills, right? Go way above 200, and I can just coast myself down the downhills. I can surge past people because that's what happens. That's why your normalized power is higher than your average power, because it takes into account the surges, right? Going around people, coming in and out of turns, trying to catch the person ahead of you that just, blew past you or chicked you or whatever it is, or going up a hill or getting out of your saddle or coasting, whatever it is. It takes that into account. It takes into account the surges, right? So let's say on Mike's next ride, his AP is still 200, right? But he was very surgy. He was, going into a headwind. He couldn't contain himself, so he went way above. And let's say his normalized power was 217. Okay, well, that'll give him a variability index of around 1.09, I believe, something around there, which is not terrible on the course, but it's a little bit too high. It's probably closer to like 1.1. Well, the truth of the matter is that he is still going to have a ride of 20 miles an hour that took him 5 hours. So what happens is you're thinking, oh, well, no, but wasn't his normalized power higher? Yes. But it also meant he had periods of dead time, right? He was coasting. The physiological cost was that he pushed 217 watts. So let's say he went up from his a percentage of his FTP from 0.75 to 8.8. He's going to be much more tired, right? He invested 200 watts, but he got a negative 17 watt return, right? He's in the red now because he went that much over, got him the same speed, got him the same time, period. So you think about those 17 extra watts, you gave those away. You worked hard. That's the physiological cost. That is the toll on your body. So you want to keep the toll on your body as close to the average power, which is what gives you the speed, which is all we care about, how quickly we're on and off the course. So when it comes to courses and races like the Wind, it's no different. Spinning and doing 220 is the same as big gearing it and doing 220, right? You're going to get 220. So it's one of those things where you always have to stay as much as you can close to what you're getting, and just realize, in my opinion, my experience, if I know I'm getting a tailwind, I know that, and I know for a fact I'm going to get one, a headwind in the future, I always scale back a little bit to leave myself wiggle room. Never in my life have I worked with an athlete, and I don't think you have either, that got done with their entire race and said, man, I definitely wish I would have pushed it more on the bike. No one ever says that. They always say overcooked it. Probably should have scaled things back. It's always best to save, right? It's always best to save, even if you're unsure, right? If you get to mile 80, 85 with a bike, whether it's windy, whether it's hilly, and you're playing it, you got a little bit of wiggle room, and let's say you're below your average power goal. Mike's going for a 200 average power, and he's at 194, right? And he's like, man, I feel really great these last 3 months. I can probably push it a little bit. Then push it a little bit. But the likelihood is you're going to say, you know what? 194 feels fine.
I'm good.
I'd rather save that energy to be better on the run. And that is the name of the game. It was something I thought about on my run the other day, was just how triathlon continues and will always and forever be about the run. And while that seems to be everyone's focus when they want to run 20-mile bricks and, 26-mile training runs, the Ironman is like, your run means nothing if you haven't done the swim and the bike and have that fitness to where you can start with your weapon fresh. And that starts with the swim, and then it goes into how you regulate effort, speed, and power on the bike.
Oh,
sorry. I know that was like, I went way in on that one, but I feel like
way in, which was good. It was a great thing. Yeah. It just stopped a little.
I had the notepad and the pen. I'm jotting down, stings on paper, trying to make sure trying to explain it as best I could, because there's still people have a hard time wrapping their brain around, why am I not going faster from a normalized power? It's the physiological cost. It's the surges, and you don't want to be surged because it takes things out of you. And then, we could even go way down that rabbit hole of, when you start producing lactate and what happens when you're going from lactate, creation, and now you're canceling out lactate combustion, and where you're finding the line between that and where your energy is going to do those things. That's why, we always talk about never standing right on a course and producing so much power that it's hard to get back. And it's hard to, because you can't not produce lactic acid once you do that, because you're putting so much leverage. It's physics. And it's just really hard, again, on windy courses, on hilly courses, to stay as smooth as you possibly can. I think the year I did Wisconsin with you, I think my VI was like 1.08. It was about as good as I think I could get. But it's challenging, and the same thing with wind. But it's better to have the juice at the end than to feel like you're going to have it and it be gone.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and like that was really interesting to listen to. And I, as you know, don't really ride with power a lot, and I've done it. I've played with it and everything like that. And to me, it's just like, it really helps me understand. And, it's just, I sit here and go, man, I've gone around and around about this, but it's sort of one of those hills I'm going to die on a little bit, because I don't know. I respect what's going on there, but I do think it takes a lot more to sort of understand that by feel. And I know it's probably not, anywhere near as accurate or whatever, but like for me, it's just sort of flowing, and it's like, I don't know. I like to do sport in a way where it's like, if you're out dancing and you have a power meter on, that would be kind of weird, right? So it's like I want to flow with things sometimes. So, but like for me, I do the same things. I just don't have a read on it, other than how it feels. And I have a good feeling for when I'm going into the wind. Like, I think I have a little bit of a different strategy, and I don't know if it's right or not, but like when I feel wind, I kind of like, because there's a big thing with, especially on a Wisconsin course, is momentum. So if I feel like I have something given to me for like a 3-mile stretch, I'll take it. And the same with kind of going down hills. I work on getting down hills faster and really using that momentum into the next hill and stuff like that. But I'm always thinking about climbing easily and as easy as possible, which is the biggest thing I ever learned when I was riding with a power meter for a while, was how to climb. For me, that was like the biggest awakening ever, because I just had a tendency to hammer, and the understanding of how to rein that in a little bit. And when you're talking about wind, and especially going into it, man, it's the biggest patience game there is. And like you said, I think fluid, or you just gotta be relaxed out there, because that tension alone just really, I believe things like, if you're super tense, even if you're trying to control your watts and the whole thing like that, I think that kind of stuff really kind of grinds you out too. So there's a art, I guess, to riding into the wind. And when we, would ride at the lab, and we just I would do that loop, and I would face wind every time. I just got so accustomed to it that when I get into wind, it's sort of like a hill too, man. People see a hill and they're like, oh shit, a hill. And I just see a hill, and I see a hill now. It doesn't register as like, oh, this is going to be a bitch. It's just like, you have to strategically approach it, and you have to be patient with it. And I think those are the, you know, I think those are all really interesting thoughts, because riding into the wind is, like you said, man, it can really grind you out, especially on a long, you know, stuff like you're talking about at Texas, where it just never seems to end. I mean, at Wisconsin, it's just always swirling. So that's kind of always been my favorite ride, because you're always, and that's the same deal when you got crosswinds and things like that. You just have to relax, man. You can't kind of fight it, because what do you say? God's thumbs and you're going to be in you, man. And so it's like, you just have to,
totally like that.
It's like swimming, you know, like in the, like if you're getting in a scrum, if you start to fight it, that's going to get harder. You just got to kind of bounce with it, you know, and kind of flow and not try to overpower somebody. Just kind of like, if they knock you, just kind of go a little bit to the other way or whatever. And just kind of, it's like swimming downstream, you know, even when you're going into the wind or going up a hill.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't even say like, you know, this is the hill you're going to die on. This is the way you climb. Mm-hmm. And that's different from most people, right? You don't use a power meter, so you've spent the last 8, 9, 10 years of racing and doing an Ironman every year, and how you train and riding the trace and hilly courses, calibrating what feels like what, right? From energy level. You've done it a ton of times. You've done it over and over again. That is your number one. You are your number one device. And there's a lot of athletes that still do that. But where the problem comes in for other athletes that don't do that, right? You haven't gone through that period of understanding, right? You haven't been in the sport long enough or taken the time and the effort to just kind of put away the device and learn what feels like what and how to self-govern, right? Then and you've become married to data and your watch to tell you how to feel. I wouldn't say that you're at a disadvantage, but it takes more thought process to figure out what's going to work, you know, based on how you've trained, your physiology, because a lot of people will go too fast or they'll go too slow, right? Because they have little faith. But if they have the numbers and that to go by it,
that's a good point.
Then they can execute it. And that's just, you have to understand what kind of athlete, you know, you are. I went back for argument's sake, I went back and looked at my file from September 11th, 2016. God bless. I'm going to give myself a little pat on the back here. My variability index was actually 1.04 for that hilly ass course, meaning my average power for that day was 183 and my normalized power was only 190. Average heart rate 139. That got me for the day a 546 bike split. But I will say that bike split was only made possible by my swim fitness, which was a 59-minute swim that day. And then I absolutely tore off at like a bat out of hell on the run, then bonked a little bit towards the end. But overall, still my best race. But I put all my eggs in, even being able to run in I think it was like low 340s that day, all into swim fitness and just in cycling and not being an idiot. And because I needed it that day, because Hayden was just born. He was in the NICU for 6-7 weeks. Every single one of my long rides, every one, because I didn't want to be far away from home. I wanted to make sure that if Hayden needed anything or Allie needed anything, that, you know, I was there. I wasn't out, you know, 2.5 hours out of a 5-hour bike ride, you know, couldn't get home. Every single ride was on the trainer. So I really didn't know, right? You can do as much big gear work as you want to, but I didn't know how well I was going to do on the hill. So I had to give myself a really strict plan. And I remember even on that day is like getting absolutely just blown past going up some of those hills. And I was like, God, I am in like the worst shape. People are absolutely crushing me. And then I distinctly remember going back a year or 2 years to when you and I did Louisville, I think in 2012 or 2013 or 14, something like that. Last year it was hot. And I got out of the water, and the very first hill, very first one, you know, what is it, like, you know, 16, 17 miles in, this dude comes around me. I think we talked about it after the race. He was wearing tennis shoes and flatbed pedals with cages. He comes roaring past me. I mean, roaring out of his saddle like he's on stage 19 of the Tour de France, trying to clip out, you know, at that point, it was probably Contador, and he was everything he had to blow past me. I was like, oh my God, I'm done. I'm done. This day is done. And then I remember seeing him, I don't know, I think 10 miles later on the side of the road pouring water all over his head. And I was like, okay, I feel better now. I was like, I feel a little bit better about my day and had a pretty good day. So it is like, the surging and stuff. Again, like knowing who you are is very, very, and knowing who you're not. Right. And that's, you're very good at that. That's something that you perfected the last 8 or 10 years. You know who you are, you know what needs to be done. You've also done the course a ton, which is another, flag and feather in the cap for riding on courses or riding into wind, being outside, right? Practicing what conditions feel like. These are all things that, because even going back to, like, you see this more and more and more these days is, people complaining about road surfaces. The road surfaces are terrible. I've never, you never hear that from a person who rides outside a lot. They're like, I thought they were great.
Yeah.
Like, these rides were perfect. But it's because you don't ride on roads, period. You don't ride on roads. And so you also don't take into account the energy impact, right, from clenching and riding your bike on roads that are rough, right? We continue to take the easy way out in all things, and we go do something hard and we whine and bitch about why it's not easier. And it's not that it's not easier, it's that your level of comfort is so delicate that even the most minor crack in the road seems like, a break in, the surface of a road 20 miles long. Right. And so there's potholes were covered. Remember specifically, and then we'll move on to the next question, I swear. The year you and I did Muncie, you and I hit the lab, which is this 1.2 mile loop, airfield strip. We talk about a lot. We affectionately called lab, which has now been commercialized, and now it's just a place to take pictures for your wedding, but whatever. And if it was like 15 mile an hour winds a day, we were like, where's the wind today? Because it's always windy. Mm-hmm. And you and I did Muncie, and we got done, and everyone was talking about the wind. Man, did you feel that? The wind was just crazy. And I remember you and I looking at each other being like, there was wind?
Yeah.
I don't being wind. And it goes to show you, and just another lesson in putting yourself in environments and on road conditions and in road surfaces and different temperatures. Like, anything you can do to make everything feel familiar will set you up so well on race day, because anything to a triathlete that feels unfamiliar also means uncomfortable, also means out of control, also means I'm worrying and I don't know how to adapt. I don't know how to react. And it puts you behind the 8 ball. But if you put yourself in a million different scenarios and you become accustomed to it, or you remember what it feels like and go back in your Rolodex of experiences, you'll have something and a clue, right? Or a tip to be like, oh, that's right, I did this, back, and now I can do this. Instead of having nothing, right? You open up your catalog of a Post-it note because all you did was do the same thing or the same ride every way into conditions, and everything feels the same. You have nothing to go back up. You want like a huge handbook, survival guide to get through the swim, the bike, and the run. And that only comes from experiences, not from, isolating yourself in a 300 square foot room.
It's true, man. And one quick thing before we go from that, when I think about my training and not riding with power and things like that, for me, I've had some pretty good rides in racing, and I've had some kind of shitty ones. And usually what it comes down to for me is I just don't ride enough, and you've talked about that with me in the past. It's like, the reality is, if you're training for Ironman and, you're not getting a few real long rides in, because that's like, it's not easy to do for me. I don't know why. Especially since we don't have the trace anymore and whatever, and that wasn't even easy. So, but you got to do it. Last year I swam way, way, way past the distance several times, and it felt pretty easy. I felt under control, and then I get on the bike and I know I'm kind of playing from the ground up on that thing and hoping for the best. But the reality is getting good training and getting a lot of it and pushing yourself out and feeling comfortable with the distance is a huge thing too. And I think that's a part of it that kind of screws me up is if I'm not trained up, then my whole feel is not quite as good as it should be, and power would probably have helped me last year. But anyway, we can move on.
Well, I mean, before we move on, is I think rabbit hole gone down is as much as I want to give myself a pat on the back for the execution of that race. I've mentioned this many times on the podcast that and again, like, you know, I gave the example of where riding on a trainer is the only thing you can do, right? It is your option. And to me, during those period of weeks leading up to Ironman Wisconsin, that was all I had, right? And that was the choice that I made, was to ride inside, to be in and around you either before Hayden was born, and then he was in the NICU for 4 days, and it was all super stressful. And I decided to stay at home. So all I had was the trainer. But I know for a fact, I remember thinking when I got done with that race, because I had no feel that I hadn't been on a road since I got there in months. And I remember going into that race feeling like I had a legit shot for a podium spot just based on my fitness level. I mentioned looking back right now, I was doing like 5-hour rides with 295, 200 watts. I had a 20-mile run at 7:53 pace. I had another one 2 weeks before at around 7:50 pace, coming off with a really hard ride the day before. I was in really, really great shape. And that was 2 weeks out. I mean, I had never felt that fit and durable. But I was fit in a way that wasn't 100% like the race was going to be. I was fit in a controlled environment, right? The runs were all outside. The swims were long. They were hard. From a bike standpoint, I had indoor bike fitness to put me up towards the top. But what I didn't have was that real road riding experience with turns, with corners, with hills, with inclines, right? With surging, with, you know, and the tension that is created when you have to grip your bike or feel like you need to grip it harder than you really need to because you're not used to the conditions on the road. Like, I had conditioning, but the course unconditioned me in a way because I had not had experience. So when we talk about it, in me specifically, when I talk about the importance of getting outside and experiencing these things and being able to ride 210 watts outside versus 210 indoors in a controlled environment, right? I know this from experience. I've been there. I've done that, and I've come up short, right? Because of, you know, I'm not blaming my podium spot. Let me get this straight on not riding outside, but I know for a fact the energy that it took out of me because of the road surfaces was substantial. And it's not because Wisconsin has the worst roads ever. It's mainly because I didn't have any experience on riding the roads, period. So again, don't go, you know, don't treat yourself like that. Get out, experience those things, experience the wins, know what it's like. If you really want to transfer your fitness to race day performance, you've got to be able to do the work to get the most out of it. So we will move on, even though we went down that massive rabbit hole. This is why we have a problem with Q&As, because we just go way.
Well, that was a good
down.
point, though. I think that, when you get up on that course, especially. I mean, I had a really good, more or less hard trainer, season, and had a decent race at Chattanooga, but that course is a little bit different than Wisconsin,
Yeah, for sure. Next question, Shannon Fitzgerald. Tire suggestions, especially for someone who is very concerned about flatting in a race. I know my current tires definitely are slower, but my tire changing skills are even slower, so not flatting is pretty important to me. All right. Another opportunity for me to get some hate mail. Learn how to change a tire.
Yeah.
Period. And again, another issue with the obsession we have of riding inside. You never practice changing a tire, ever, because all you do is ride inside. Because what happens now is if you get a flat tire, you know what it does? You stop your workout because you don't know how to change it. Mm-hmm. Learn how to change a tire, period. Because I promise you, once you learn how to change a tire, it's like riding a bike. You'll do it without thinking of it. And the best way to do it is to practice it in your garage, period, over and over and over and over and over and over and over again. Practice it, right? Practice the front. more so practice the rear, because it's a lot harder to take off the rear than it is the front. Figure out way to hang your bike, ways to do this, tricks of the trade of how to change things quickly. If you got, vertical dropouts, horizontal dropouts, you have disc brakes or not, there's all things you have to, everybody's concerned about, having the best tire, not the flat. Just spend a little bit of extra time before a ride, after a ride, whatever it is, on a commercial break of your favorite TV show, learning how to change a tire, because the difference in rolling resistance and speed on tires is insane. We're talking 5, 6, 7 minutes on an Ironman if you're using like what is very, very common. So I train on Gator skins, which is a brand that Continental makes, that are super durable. One, because I don't want to spend a lot of money going through race quality tires this season, but I also like training on Gator skins because they're so freaking slow. Because once you go from like a Gator skin slow tire in training, and then you go to an actual race wheel with race tires, it feels like it's like you're like, it's like go put on a wetsuit.
It's like
you're
shaving
flying.
your legs, man.
Yeah, it's like shaving legs. It is. You feel so fast. I always go, I'm a GP 4000 guy. You are too. Great product, very fast tires. Riding Gator skins, I get it. You're like, I don't want a flat. I had this conversation with an athlete doing Ironman Arizona, I think 2 years ago. There's like, I know there's a lot of, thorns and burrs or whatever it is coming down the course. You can get flat tires. So I'm thinking about rolling Gator skins. I'm like, well, seriously, a Gator skin will cost you more time than changing a flip. If you learn to change a tire in less than 5 minutes, which is not that difficult, right? If you learn to change a tire in less than 5 minutes, it'll be faster getting a flat than not getting a flat and riding with Gator skins. Facts. 100% facts. There was this huge article, kind of like I guess a little bit ribbing of Andy Potts. Like, this is like 7, 8, 9 years ago when he was in Kona, but he was so worried about getting a flat and it ruined his day that he was riding Gator skins. And he was coming off so behind and wasting so much time and effort and energy on these massive, knobby tires. And then he finally switched. He said, because they're so insanely slow. So learn how to change a tire. Or if you know how to change one, practice doing it over and over and over and over and over again. Practice it, right? Take the time to do it. You don't have to blow through CO2 cartridges, but that's, again, something you need to practice. A lot of people have CO2 cartridges on their rides. They have no idea how to use them. They have no idea how to change a tire or use a tire lever. They don't know that if they've got race wheels, and I might need another valve extender. It's like all these things, like you will spend, hours and hours a week researching, all these things to do on Facebook groups and on Slow Twitch or on Reddit on how to be faster, and we'll drop $800 on a wetsuit and $350 on an aero helmet, and then renting race wheels. I'm like, just take a couple of minutes of your own free time and learn about these things that can cost you 10 or 15 minutes on a race, or find yourself waiting for a SAG vehicle that may or may not ever come, right? But you also need to learn not just how to change a tire, but how to use a CO2 cartridge, right? How to follow the instructions, what feels like what pressure, how do I get towards not too much? Like, all those things take practice, but I can't encourage you enough to find the time to do that. And it's intimidating. Yes, it might make you feel stupid. Yes, you might not feel good at it, but I'm telling you, once you figure out how to do it, it is totally like riding a bike. Last year, I remember it was like my second or third ride outside. I met two of our athletes, Chuck and Wes, went for the trace. I'm like 40 miles out. We're going downhill, and I could hear my rim. I was like, I got a flat tire. And yes, your immediate thought is, I wonder if I can change this quickly. Right? Because it's like you're holding the group. It's like, let's put a flat tire. I think it took me just a little bit under 5 minutes, and we're just kind of shooting the shit, getting it changed, and it was good the rest of the way. Once you learn how to do it, and guess what? It'll make your experience in racing so much more enjoyable. Yeah. Because you won't be so worried about getting a flat, right? So many people have race stress anxiety about the swim. A lot of them don't swim enough. A lot of people have, panic attack or bad dreams during riding the bike. Like, what if I get a flat? These are all things you can solve. With extra time paying attention to the details, the fundamentals. They're not the fun things, but I'm telling you, they make the whole experience that much better.
I couldn't agree more with that, man, because I'm that guy, right? I don't like it. I don't like thinking about it. I never have. I've never been really super mechanical in general. But every year, and I don't necessarily suggest waiting this long, but if I get through a season or whatever, and I'm like 2 weeks when my taper kind of starts and I have a little more time, that's when I go into, I go, all right. And now it's like, every year, the family ritual, I pull out the tires and I just sit around and put it on and put it off and get familiar with it right before a race. And then I'm like, okay, I can do that. But I, probably would suggest practicing more often, but if that's what you got to do, you got to do. But it is one of those things where I just hate it, man.
But it's amazing advice. I mean, is to use that extra taper time to practice, right? Buy an extra CO2 cartridge, do this, like figure it out. And because it is like, it's, a lot of times we'll blame, we like to place blame, right, on other people or other experiences or accidents. But a lot of shit's like it's on us, right? We might not be able to avoid, right, the random thorn or piece of glass that you pick up, right, on your tires, right? But you can learn how to change it quickly. You can also learn, right, to pre-ride the course and look for the bad spots in the road. You can also avoid, right, and have the bike handling skills to avoid the cracks in the road that can cause pinch flats, right, that most race directors and all races have, spray paint around. A lot of flats are because of that, because you run right into a spot you shouldn't, period. Yes, there's accidents. You pick up glass. Another thing, checking your, a lot of people get multiple flats when you're changing a tube. Like take the bad tube out and then run your fingers inside the tire to make sure there's still nothing in there, because it was caused by something. And if it wasn't a pinch flat, then it was caused by some kind of debris. So run your hands and your fingers inside the tire to make sure there's no glass or thorn or anything that's gonna. Because what happens is you're gonna change a tire. You're gonna blame it on the CO2. You're gonna blame it on the tube you put in. But more than likely, it's because you forgot to take out what went in the first place. There's a lot of things we can do on our own to be prepared for, the accidents, right, or in unfortunate events and bad luck. Because it's a lot of times, listen, bad luck happens. It just does, period. But a lot of times you can at least mitigate and lessen the loss of the effect of that bad luck on preparation. That doesn't cost you anything except for a couple bucks for a CO2 cartridge or an extra tube, and just learning how to adapt. And I'll tell you right now, before I learned how to really change a tire and change it quickly, that was me. I was so worried about getting a flat tire that it made, like, I'm sure it affects performance. It has to, because it's mental and emotional energy wasted. And if you have, if you got tubeless tires, right, you need to learn how to handle those, right, because you're not carrying an extra tube. So there's a lot of things you have to think about. You can't just go to the bike shop and say, give me the fastest one. You also got to know how to change the fastest one if you got it. So it's a lot of things, but I love your advice about using that extra time on taper where you're twiddling your thumbs or searching the Facebook groups, or, which is, kind of, I gotta kind of say this real quick, because one of our athletes sent me a picture of an athlete that's doing Ironman Texas in a few weeks, and they wanted to say that the longest brick they've done is only an 80-mile bike ride followed by a 15-mile run.
Okay.
Excuse me? Yeah, what? And one of his options for making up one of his missed workouts was to do an 112-mile bike followed by a 20-mile run. What is wrong with people? Stop doing shit like that. It's hurtful. Hurtful to yourself and to my inner being. Next question. I think it may be the only one we've got time for.
Yeah.
We got on a lot of rabbit holes today. You got anything else to say on the tire changing situation?
No, other than just do it, because we read books, we watch videos, and we listen to podcasts about it, but we never put shit into action. It's just something you got to do,
That is true. We are an actionless society in a lot of ways. Taylor Page. I am new to triathlon, stumbled onto the idea of doing a sprint try to help trick myself into training and making smarter choices. I'm a heavier guy at 250, 6 foot tall. Primary goal is just to finish my first triathlon and go from there. But is there general guidance for when it's the right time to move up? I don't know if I could realistically handle an Ironman in the next 2 years, but already thinking about an Olympic next year. I feel like I need to be at healthier weight before pushing myself too hard with some of the longer distances. I'm swimming 3 days a week and running 3 days a week. Just started adding bike in. A couple other questions in there. First off, welcome to the sport. I think a lot of us, myself included, have kind of used triathlons to trick yourself into making smarter choices, in life and, choosing things. I even had an athlete the other day say, "Hey, I think I'm going to stop training in the morning and I'm going to start training in the evening because I find myself making bad decisions in the evening. And if my time is busy and allocated towards training, maybe I won't make these poor decisions." So you're not alone, and welcome. I think getting into the sport, sticking with sprints and tries and doing what you're trying to do is awesome and should really be focused on not so much the distance, but the overall wellness and health aspect of how your body feels. Because it's going to take you a while to get into shape and going over and beyond, right? To me, it's like the question I get all the time is, I want to catch up. I'm a little bit behind. You can't catch up on fitness. It doesn't work like that. Just like you can't catch up on sleep, period. The two biggest myths. I think I'm a little behind in my training. I need to catch up. You can't catch up. It doesn't work like that. Because once you do a 10-mile run, if you want to go 14, then the 14 is going to negate some of the 10 you just did because you're way overdoing it and you're hurting yourself. Okay. You got to treat yourself with respect. You have to understand where you are. Don't get too ahead of yourself. And enjoy the journey, enjoy the process, figure things out, do it the right way first. A lot of people get stuck in the muck and the mud of triathlon, trying to move up too quickly, don't learn the fundamentals, and then they have to come back and try to relearn them later. Take your time, stay healthy or get healthier. If you feel like you're not at the healthiest standpoint, then, and then the likelihood probably is that right now you're using triathlon to exercise, right? To exercise yourself into shape, right? And then once you get to that point where you feel like you're in good enough shape to train and add intensity and to be, very specific about it, then I think you'll probably have an idea. But, like you said in your comment, I feel like I need to be at a healthier weight before pushing myself too hard with some longer distances. You said it, and keep that mentality and objective nature, because it's very non-triathlon to be objective and to have that kind of, self-awareness and take care of yourself. And I think that's the biggest thing you can do is to play the long game. And it sounds like you already are. So keep your headspace on that and just go for overall health and wellness and fitness. It's so underrated. It's so underrated just having a high standard of health and wellness and fitness about yourself in everyday life. It's priceless. So do whatever you can to stay on that track. And then I think you'll probably know when it's time to move up versus wanting to move up.
Yeah, that resonates with me. I mean, when I started running, late 40s, and I went way too fast I was just every weekend, but my fear was that I was going to stop if I didn't have a carrot. I mean, it was just sort of my thing. And it was kind of like that with triathlon too. Is it's like, all right, I need something else pulling me. And as we've talked over the years, we realize that is not always a solid game plan, because I think the one thing that really helped was that I knew you back then, and I knew a bunch of people. We had a good community, and it kind of kept me around. But there's no doubt that I have faced many times, being real close to burnout. And we do what we do, and we talk about it all the time, and it's allowed me to figure out how to pull back. And you're right, that is a great perspective to have from the beginning, because there's time to move up, and it really is about feeling good. It's not about, I don't know, in a lot of ways I think what I was doing was self-punishment for some deep-seated shit that I was trying to get through at the time. You know what I mean? It's sort of like I got to prove it to myself, and I don't care how bad it feels. You know, when I started running, I was moving up the ladder so quick that I was sore every single day. You know, it just but the fire was burning in my brain so hard just to prove something that wasn't even. I don't even know who I was trying to prove it to. You know, it was just sort of this isolated kind of, I don't feel good enough about myself. So I think that really is at the core of how everybody should approach training, is do something that's good for yourself.
I mean, yeah, I'm very, very grateful that I got into the sport for similar reason that you did. You know, I got into it to turn, and I still use it definitely to escape and punish myself and do all those things. But I got into the sport and will forever be grateful for the sport, you know, for a ton of reasons. But, you know, the first and foremost was, I remember I was, you know, it took me a while to get obviously the alcoholism and addiction stuff out of the way. But I mean, I dropped 60 pounds training for a triathlon. That's why I got into it. And I've told the story a million times. I won't tell it again, but you know, it helped me in a way, like at least start to turn my life into a healthier way, you know, and to stop eating like crap and to focus on myself and my fitness level. I'm glad I got it, because that's still the piece that resonates with me when I get into a funk or I get down or I get close to burnout and feel like, I want to stop. It's like, I mean, I remember it's like, I want to be, it's the same message that I said to another athlete a few weeks ago is the same message that I tell myself. And the message to this athlete that was going through a hard time and not getting in workouts. And this will make me sound like a total asshole, but it's, I've been working with this athlete for 7 years. So there's a lot of love there and a lot of sharing and vulnerability between both of us. And he's a guy, and I just, he said, "Hey, I'm just not motivated. I need to find a race, to do something." And I said, you could always just train to be the healthiest dad and partner you can be, so you're around on this planet as long as possible. It took him a few days to respond, but I got positive feedback. But it's true, right? It is 100% true. And while training for triathlon and being fit and eating well and drinking well and treating ourselves the way we need to, right? Just not just physically, but, I recommend athletes at least once a week to go see a therapist. Had somebody today say they were calling their therapist, and to start going back to therapy to deal with, life. Is like, does it guarantee we live to 95? No, doesn't. But does it sure as hell give us a better chance? 100%. 100%. Whether you got kids or not kids, whether you're in a relationship, not a relationship, the best chance you have of leaving the best mark on this planet is to be around for the longest period of time. That's just a fact. So if you can wrap your brain around that and remember that on the days you don't want to do something, or you get so swept up in the performance of a race and a time goal that you might have, and you got a podium, or you got to beat this time from last year, you got to this distance. In the scheme of things, that is so trivial. It's just so trivial. What you want to be is the person who's healthy, right? Who sets a good example, who can go outside and play ball or play sports or go for walks with their kids, their spouse. It's not too tired, right? It was one of the things that a lot of people said when they went into treatment. I said, I was tired of being tired, and that's how we are now. How a lot of people are is they're not quite there yet. They're tired, but they don't want to do anything about it. And at some point, you got to do that. So it's always a great perspective to have, is to remember that, you don't have to say that your body is a temple if you don't want to go that route, but it is the only vessel you got in this life. So you can treat it like a carnival, and a Ferris wheel, or you can treat it like, something that you want to have, to be around for as long as possible, and not just be around as long as possible, but not be in and out of the hospital, not be dragging, not be sitting on the couch eating potato chips, not be a person who just is, but a person who lives. And there is a distinct difference between a person that just is and is here, and a person that actually truly lives the life that they have. And so again, it's always, I think, it's always an option, whether you want to admit or not. It's always an option for us to do better, to be better, to be fitter, to eat healthier, to live a better, more fulfilling life. But it is the harder choice. And that's why I think it's such a struggle for most people.
It's good stuff, man.
We will call this the Rabbit Hole podcast because we went down quite a few of them today. But hey, you know what? It's Easter. 'Tis the season. Yeah, I talked for like 20 minutes on that one. So do you have anything else, or did I just take up too much of our time?
No, man. That was fine.
Yeah, I mean, you've been there. I mean, it's all, it's all.
I'm a good listener, dude.
Yeah, you are a good listener.
So if you need a coach, I'll just be able to listen.
He's your backboard. We hope you were your backboard today. As always, we love you. We appreciate you. We hope you have an amazing weekend. If you're racing, get out there, whip some ass, control what you can control, the effort and the execution. That's all you can. And as another friendly reminder, go to our website. C26 Triathlon is our one-stop shop for all things coaching, camps, and community. If you need anything from Mike specifically, he's available, CrushingIron@gmail.com. If you need anything from me, C26coach@gmail.com.
All right, buddy. Well, have a great day, man.
You too, man. See you, dude.
All right, bye.